is delayed. Thanks for coming, for those of you who have. It's great to be here this morning. My name is Andrew Brown, World Travel and Tourism's Regional Director for Europe, Middle East and Oceania. At WTTC, or the World Travel and Tourism Council, for those of you who don't know, we represent the private sector of travel and tourism. Our members are the presidents, chairs and CEOs of some of the largest and most influential organisations across the sector, including airlines, airports, hotels, cruises and destinations. It is with their support and that of the entire private sector that we advocate and highlight the economic impact of travel and tourism on a social and sustainable manner. Now, before I dive in this morning to the roadmap to sustainability in travel and tourism, I thought I'd share with you, hot off the press, the key highlights of our latest economic impact numbers that were just released. In 2022, travel and tourism's GDP contribution to the world's economy grew by 22% year on year. This was despite the continuing challenges and China's borders remaining closed. As a sector, we now generate 7.7 trillion US dollars. This is still, though, 23% below those 2019 numbers. Over 21 million new jobs were created last year, meaning that we now account for 1 in every 11 jobs globally, or 295 million people work in travel and tourism. International spending, well, that was up a whopping 82% year on year, but still, it sounds great, but 40%, yes, 40% below those pre-pandemic numbers. So what for 2023? Well, it's expected to be fueled by China's reopening, and despite the ongoing challenges, such as inflationary pressures, it is anticipated that by the end of this year, the sector will be worth $9.5 trillion. You may be thinking, that's great, but what does that mean in terms of a pre-pandemic level? Well, that 9.5 trillion US dollars is only 5% below 2019 numbers. So by the end of this year, we're getting there, almost back to parity. While in terms of employment, there will be an additional 24 million roles created this year, leaving us only 14 million off the previous high in 2019. So that's just a flavour of the economic impact numbers. There'll be more to come across the next couple of weeks for all 185 countries, 25 regions, including the Middle East. So look out for that shortly. But this morning, I thought I'd share with you what is the heartbeat of sustainability in travel and tourism, and identify where we, as a sector, are currently placed. When it comes to sustainability, there's a lot of chatter, there are a lot of announcements and plenty of noise around what folks are doing. And it's important to know that not just as a business, as an industry or a sector, but at an individual level, we have an ethical responsibility to ensure that we take the right steps forward in sustainability to save our planet before it's too late. Too late, as regulatory bodies will increasingly continue to crack down on those who are not measuring or reporting or ultimately improving their sustainability performance. Or too late for those who don't adapt in time. Well, you'll be left behind by your competitors as consumer demand continues to shift towards more sustainable alternatives. And one final consideration to take into account is that sustainability, it doesn't need to be expensive. It can actually help with operational savings. As technology continues to advance, sustainable alternatives will soon become cheaper than current options, such as fossil fuels. And while further improvements to the bottom line occurs, as we become more efficient when it comes to water, energy, or even through reducing the amount of waste that we throw out. With all this in mind, at WTTC, our members, they set our mandate, and they tell us time and time again that sustainability is the defining issue, not just in their business, but of our sector and our generation. And as such, sustainability, it is our top strategic priority. To drive the agenda forward for the entire sector, we have gathered our members' brightest sustainability experts, partnered with the relevant UN organisations and premier industry associations to develop initiatives, guidance, and ultimately ensure that there is a coordination and alignment in the global agenda on traveller tourism sustainability. As a starting point, we've released these 4 reports over the last 2 years to address the triple planetary crisis that we face of pollution, climate change, and biodiversity loss. We recognise that all of these issues, they can only be properly addressed through governance. Thus the need to develop a focus solely on destination stewardship. In all of these reports, we found it necessary to take a holistic perspective as they are all intrinsically related. Plastic pollution produces CO2 that kills animals while damaging their biodiversity, while climate change affects nature, but nature that can help absorb the CO2 or help buffer coastal areas through mangroves, for example. What we also noticed through these 4 reports is that there was a huge gap in the research, that despite the enthusiasm for decarbonising, companies, they didn't know where to start. And that was for one simple reason. The data, it just simply didn't exist. For decades, the travel and tourism sector, we struggled to quantify our climate impact. And that's because we're so international, working across borders, that measuring all the emissions across our industries and supply chains, it's not that straightforward. So last year, along with our partners, WTTC, we launched one of the biggest projects in our organization's history. We set about measuring the global carbon footprint of travel and tourism. Now, WTTC, perhaps we're more well known for the economic numbers that I shared earlier, the amount of jobs, the amount of GDP contribution that we produce. And we expanded those economic numbers to include and categorically measure the environmental and social footprint of travel and tourism. We can now track the sector's progress towards the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Through our ESR data, we can track indicators that include greenhouse gas emissions, how much water or land our sector uses, even the levels of energy or pollutants from an environmental perspective. This data, it goes further, breaking down into age, wage, and gender profiles when it comes to the 295 million people that currently work in travel and tourism. We can apply this data to all 185 countries and the industries that make up our sector. This morning, though, I will just be focusing on the greenhouse gas emissions, or GHG. Through this barometer, we can measure and track our sector's global carbon footprint, again, for the first time in our history. There have been previous attempts to do this. One opinion, it gave us a range that travel and tourism was responsible for between 8 to 12% of all emissions, which it was pretty close. But what our research shows is that in 2019, our GHG emissions totaled just over 8% globally. So now we know what we're working with. Now we can measure globally by individual country. We can compare where we are today to where we were 10 years ago, and we can track it. Quite frankly, this is game-changing. This will give our businesses the data that they need. It will give governments the hard facts and evidence that they require to help them meet their carbon footprint targets. Now, from this research, you'll see that GHG emissions, they did increase between 2010 and 2019 at a steady rate of 2.4%. But there is some good news, and that is the fact that across the same time period, travel and tourism's GDP grew almost 2 times faster, at 4.3% annually. And whilst we have a long way to go to completely remove the carbon being emitted from travel and tourism, the numbers are showing us, most likely, it's due to the improvements in technology, as well as the introductions from a number of energy and water efficiency and waste reduction measures, that GHG emissions per dollar generated, they're going down. This illustrates that as a travel and tourism sector and each individual country, we can continue to grow whilst the amount of carbon that we emit reduces. Now here, you may have been thinking, what does it mean by each individual sector? Well, we can see exactly how the GHG is produced across those subsectors or industries that make up travel and tourism. Now this includes scopes 1, 2, and 3, as well as all those emissions from international transport. Now, of course, a significant contributor is transportation. But remember, this includes everything, such as domestic cars, trains, buses, as well as international flights and cruises, making up, 38% of total emissions. But this is not a surprise, given that our sector is all about moving people from one place to the next. And it's also promising to see that the likes of international transport, they're taking those productive steps to reduce their impact. Take Etihad Airways, for example. Just a few months ago, they operated one of the world's first commercial flights using a blend of traditional and aviation fuel to make that journey. What we can see here on the slide and across the last few slides, that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this data. We're very, very excited about its future possibilities. And if you'd like to learn more afterwards, please come up and let's have a chat about it further. Now, at WTTC, whilst our members, they are the leaders and innovators, and many of whom are well on their way in terms of their sustainability roadmap. They have given us this directive, and that is to ensure that all operators across our sector, they know how to take their first step into sustainability. Why? Well, as you all know, the hardest part about sustainability is getting started. One way that we've done this is through the Hotel Sustainability Basics, or the Basics. This is an initiative by the industry for the industry, with the support and input of WTTC members and over 60 leading hotel brands, such as Iberostar, who they were the first hotel chain to eliminate single-use plastics in all of their rooms, and who are now electrifying all of their operations that were previously powered by fossil fuels. These industry leaders, they pulled together their best practices to offer a starting point for all stakeholders in the industry who are looking to embark on their sustainability journey. The Basics, they are designed to help raise what is that minimum level of sustainability that is expected across the global hospitality and lodging industry. Split across 3 categories: efficiency, planet, and people. There are ultimately 12 actions which, when met, are considered the foundations of lodging sustainability. Now, the Basics align with and have received the endorsement from leading industry bodies in this space, some of whom include GSTC, Travelist, and Sustainable Hospitality Alliance. And following this global recognition, we decided to take the Basics one step further. Earlier this year, in partnership with world-leading verifiers SGS and Green Key, along with the support of Azerbaijan Tourism Board, now every operator within the lodging industry can become officially Basics verified. It is a seamless and fully automated verification process that allows operators who are meeting those minimum standards in sustainability to become globally recognized. We've also opened up the Basics for destinations. For those destinations who are strategically focused on sustainability, they're now able to recommend and implement this framework across their local operators. Now, to take a deeper look at what the Basics are and how you can apply them to your business, please feel free to scan the QR code. I really hope it works. The team have promised me it does. Now, you may be thinking, Andrew, why have you added another framework or another list of verifications to hotel sustainability? Well, the unique aspect of the Basics is that it's only a 3-year program. It is that entry point or that stepping stone in hotel sustainability that at the end of the 3 years, operators will be encouraged. In fact, they will need to advance their sustainability journey through the other frameworks that are provided by the leading industry bodies. Because quite frankly, we want the Basics to become obsolete after that time period. Now, looking forward, where does that leave us in terms of a roadmap for sustainability in travel and tourism? To start with, if you haven't already, set sustainability as one of your top strategic priorities. Take the time to think about what it means for you in terms of your resources that you need in your business to learn and adapt. This is your first step. Figure out what it is that you need to do, what it is that you should be doing. Look, there are plenty of organizations out there, associations and stakeholders who are already leading in your space, in your sustainability actions. Learn from them. Ask them for their best practices. This isn't about trying to work in silos or isolation. We don't need to sit here and try and recreate the wheel every single time. Next, set a target. Start small and grow from there. The targets, they need to make sense for you, for your business and your industry. Those targets, they need to be meaningful so you can proactively work towards them. Now, with the targets in place, it's imperative that you know how to monitor, evaluate, and eventually evolve your activities. You want to be able to gauge your performance, know exactly where those pain points are in your organization, so you can report to consumers, your industry, and the world, who, if they aren't already, will be quickly looking and observing all of your operations to make sure you're meeting the sustainability requirements. Now, finally, for those companies who are already well on the way to decarbonizing your own operations, well done. But continue further. Become an advocate for sustainable travel and collaborate. We need more voices from our sector pushing others, and crucially, pushing policymakers to catalyze the change that we need as a sector. The climate crisis, it's a problem on a planetary scale, but it's also an opportunity. Through sustainability, we'll not only protect the world and its abundance of resources, but ensure that they are their inheritance for every future traveller, so that travel and tourism can continue to thrive and create prosperity for decades to come. Thank you.